Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Mr. Sydney Roundwood.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the TooFatLardies Oddcast. It's good to have you all listening to us, but today is a very sad edition of the Oddcast because 1 year ago, we were in Antwerp for the Crisis show, enjoying a wonderful evening in Antwerp's Old Town, moving through the bars, enjoying a full range of excellent Flemish beers, and fully expecting to return in 2020. But instead of that, we're just about to head in the United Kingdom into another period of lockdown with COVID cases on the rise again as well throughout Europe. And the wonderful city of Antwerp is at the forefront of the fight against the virus. So the Oddcast would normally be in our road trip format, but sadly not today. So no cramped 5-hour journey in the back of Richard's car, hurtling on the motorway to Antwerp, but instead I am still joined by our usual road trippers, the Joke and Elmo of Wargaming. We've got Richard Skimmer and
Richard Skinner. Didn't he used to do Top of the Pops?
Not half.
Nick Skinner and Richard Clark.
No, we prefer the first version. That's good.
Actually, yeah. I'm going down a deep hole tomorrow.
Show, not half. So, cats, welcome.
I could be Dick Skinner. That would be brilliant.
I think we'll move on from
this
that.
Is staying in, right?
So this is deviated already from what we thought we were going to talk about. But Jack, tell me, what part of Crisis you're missing the most?
Do you know what I miss?
Having a laugh with my mate. Oh no, we're doing that.
I do miss having a laugh. I do miss those lovely Belgian bars and beers. So much so that I found an online Belgian beer supplier and got them to ship me some beer. So I've got some De Koning to enjoy over the, Richard's showing me one on the screen. Very nice. That's exactly what I've got, mate. They're top stuff.
Yeah.
A nice bollocker
that
you can enjoy it.
And after I saw you drinking that the other night on Zoom, I ordered some as well from the Belgian beer company. So I've got a box coming with some De Koning and some Cristal and other bits and pieces. So,
nice.
It's a good memory. It's a good memory.
I miss the horse steak. I haven't had a horse steak since I was last in Antwerp, and normally one a year is enough for anybody.
Yes.
But I miss my horse steak, and surprisingly, actually, I really miss the pain in my feet that you get from standing up at shows all day.
But you can recreate that, very easily on your garden patio.
That's true, but there tend to be more war gamers at Crisis than are on my garden patio.
Talk to your wife about how Chain of Command works.
And I've really missed that, just catching up and chatting to people, and friends that we've made over in Belgium over the years. Yeah, it's a real shame that we're not going to be there for this year. I was really looking forward to our European trips. They're a big part of the hobby for me.
Yeah, me too. And in fact, I think the sad thing is that when this all started way back in March, we actually thought we might be getting to Scotland and Evesham in June. We really thought that there was no doubt at all about Crisis. I mean, it was obvious it was all going to be over, but here we still are. But that's the positive thing. We are still here. And everything about Crisis is fun. Obviously, going away with your mates is great fun. Having a laugh in the car, having a ridiculously early breakfast at Ashford, waiting for the train, but then stopping off at battlefields, planning those battlefield walks to coincide with it. All of that, the anticipation, that planning, that anticipation is all part of the pleasure. So a trip to Antwerp for Crisis isn't just about the 5 or 6 hours at the Wargames show. It's about the months of anticipation and discussing what we're going to do and really looking forward to it. So it's a kind of, there's no one thing I miss about Crisis. It's the whole gig. It's like saying you're going to see, you really miss hearing one track played by your favourite band. You don't. You miss all the tracks played by your favourite band because you can't go to the concert. And that's very much what Crisis Missing Crisis is about. So a big hello to all the guys at Tin Soldiers of Antwerp who do such a sterling job every year, and we will be back just as soon as we can get over there.
We certainly will. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's the whole aspect, isn't it? As you say, Rich, the just camaraderie that we get out there, and the good fun to have you in the back of the car for 8 hours as well, Sid.
Yeah.
my legs are enjoying not having that experience, but the rest of me certainly is missing it, like the rest of you. I actually like the before the show bit. Actually, when we first get there, we normally have lunch, and I've got loads of photos each year from us being in a particular Belgian chocolate shop, and I always have great entertainment watching you two choose your chocolates and trying to decide what goes in your 2 kilogram box of chocolates, Richard. That's always good.
Well, I get very, very specific instructions from the wife as to what chocolate she wants in there and what she doesn't want in there. So actually selecting 72 in the right blend and balance is fairly problematic.
Well, without Crisis, though, we are in the UK about to start our second period of English lockdown, I should say, not actually the UK, but England. And as lockdown looms large, I thought we'd ask, before we get started on the show, what have we got planned on the hobby front? Because I would anticipate we've all got some plans lined up. Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it? I mean, I think in a way I'm a bit relieved that we're going back into lockdown, because it's been quite tempting to go out and do the things that you normally do, which is, go to the pub, see your mates, blah, blah, blah. But I've always felt like I've been playing Russian roulette in terms of going and doing that and thinking one day it's going to get me. So having a bit of a lockdown, looking at the figures in terms of, the number of people who are going into hospital, I'm thinking, right, yeah, if we're going to do it, now's the time to do it. And let's be positive about it. And let's look at the additional time that I will have bought for myself, in terms of not doing all those things that I normally do. So I'm very keen to be, the Far East Handbook is the big thing that I'm doing at the moment, and that is really very, very close to completion. I've got, the big issue there for me has been doing the British Dominions, Empire, forces, because there's such a huge and wide array of those fighting in the Far East. And when you look at the Americans and the Japanese, they're quite organized in terms of the way their forces are structured, because basically they are armed forces that are picked up from the home country and dumped somewhere else. Whereas when you've got a sort of colonial situation, a lot of those volunteer forces have evolved over the years, and consequently, some have got this homemade armoured car, and some are equipped with Lewis guns, and some have got this, that and the other, and it's a case of trying to get all that information right. Well, the British stuff is pretty much all complete. I'm just going through the support options, just making sure we're getting all the support options right for the different theatres. So that's a really big project for me to get done. And the other thing is I'm looking to do is get all my Carthaginian forces ready for Infamy Part 2. So that's on the painting table, and also my 10mm stuff for O Group. I've got a lot of 10mm stuff. I've just got the British 12mm figures arrived from Victrix, and I'm going to be painting those up and getting them based up, because I'm really looking forward to doing a lot of games in Normandy with O Group. Because Nick, you and I have, we've been to Normandy on several occasions, and we've looked at different battlefields and all the different campaigns, and there's loads of stuff I'm really keen to do there. So I'm getting my forces ready for that. So I've actually got loads in front of me that I've got planned for the lockdown, and it's going to provide me with those extra hours of doing that. But I think the other thing to be aware of is the fact that I'm actually playing more games now than I have ever done before. I played 5 games in 5 days last week, one of which was in person, so I won't be able to do that again because of lockdown, but 4 of them were on Zoom or even on Skype. And I'm playing with people from all over the world who I wouldn't normally get a chance to game with. So in a way, lockdown has expanded my circle of gaming friends. And, we're playtesting and developing What a Cowboy. And we're playtesting and developing the Cold War rules that are being run by Peter Rossetti down in Melbourne in Australia. Those guys are just coming out of lockdown, funnily enough, and playing other games as well, just for fun, which is great. And it's I think it's important to try and take the positive from the situation and focus on, right, what can I do? Things have changed, but that doesn't mean it's going to stop me gaming. How can I get myself gaming again? And I know, Nick, you've been doing some Creepsville stuff, haven't you?
We're doing a bit of Discord. I've got one online at the moment, which is actually stalled because of my own ability to input into it, but that's going to be kicked back into action next week. I think this next period of lockdown does give us a great chance to get our teeth into some additional projects. I'm lucky enough to just have some toys land through my letterbox in the last week. We've just finished on Twitter the Brunswicker hashtag that we were doing with Stephen in Australia. There's some people have been very busy painting their Brunswickers. So that's just come to an end. So I think, yeah, it is. Yeah. But you know what? It's been fantastic watching what's gone through, and different scales, different units. Being the archetypal lazy bugger, I just went for what I thought was the easy option of doing 9 cavalrymen, 9 front rank hussars, which I'm really pleased with. They were lovely. And what you learn when you start to paint Brunswickers is that there's no such thing as black. So it's interesting when you think something's going to be quite straightforward and simple, it's actually quite detailed. But that's been good fun. I don't know what the next project will be. Stephen out in Australia is mulling on that, and that's really his baby. I'll just jump on the hashtag whenever he comes up with what it is. But we've got, yes, as you say, Rich, what a cowboy. I'm toying with where I'm going to get my cowboys from at the moment. My old cowboys from many years ago, of the old Hinchcliffe ones, have pretty much got in the bin. So I'm looking for some new ones to get, and there's various ones that are taking my eye. Probably paint some cowboys during the next lockdown period to go with that. I've also just taken delivery of some Black Seas ships that I'm going to put together and have a go at, some 74s, see how they work out, just for something different. I've been doing so much World War II lately, and what the Brunswickers made me realise was that actually I need to just vary what I paint, just vary what I produce from time to time. So the ships are going to give me a good distraction from that. I've also got, back on the World War II front, some Germans to work on. Rich, you've got your finger up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I reckon those 74 third rates could look beautiful with some nice basic colours applied, but some nice washes over them to give them that sort of weathered look. I reckon you could do a beautiful job with ships of that size. I mean, I remember when you first produced Kiss Me Hardy, the first edition, it was great fun painting those ships. What scale are the ones I've got? 1/1200?
1/1200. These are a lot bigger.
But the detail you could put on those ones, those 1/700th ones, they could be a real work of art and a real pleasure to do, because you're not doing hundreds of them like you would do with, Wargames figures.
Yeah, well, I'm really interested to see how long it takes me, because, of course, I'm used to doing the Langton one. So I've got a benchmark against which I think it takes me. How long does it take me to do a ship? So I'm interested to see how quickly these go together. I've not even opened the packets yet. So I don't really know even what's in them. But, the models that I've seen, the photos that I've seen look nice, and it looks an interesting scale to get to grips with. So, we'll see how that goes. I think, as you say, some washes would be a good way to start with that. So looking forward to that. And I think a month down lockdown, I should better get 6 ships done in that time with a bit of luck. What else?
We ask the obvious question.
Go on then. I was just about to go on to it, but you can ask me.
Is this Kiss Me Hardy 2 looming its ugly head?
I'm sure Twitter will be alive with rumours. I don't know. Let's see how it goes. We've got to paint them first. Yeah. I mean, I think if they inspire me, then it's what it's like, Rich. It's the sort of thing. Once you get the buzz, then you're flying, aren't you? But people will also be shouting, "What about Arnhem?" So we've got to, Arnhem is also factored in there too.
I was actually being
supplement too far. No, it's coming.
I was actually being facetious. I knew that as soon as you mentioned ships, you'd have your hordes of adoring fans asking you whether it was KMH2. So I thought I'd stick the knife in first.
I've also been doing a few vignettes with old kits that I've had in the garage. So remember the Paul Edwards Humber that we
I
that we
do.
produced first time round when we did our Humber
Yeah.
3D printing challenge and investigative journalism into the world of 3D.
I
Well,
do.
Paul, one of the Humbers that Paul printed failed.
Yeah.
And it came out looking like somebody had driven it into a ditch.
Yeah.
You know, with like the part of the what is it, driver's side was missing. So I decided to make that into a little vignette to make that into the terrain piece. So I've done that, and that looks really quite smart. I've done the same with an old Tiger that I had, an incomplete Tiger 148, which I made into a terrain piece. And I've got a couple of other kits hanging around that I'm probably going to do the same with those over lockdown, because they're just good fun. They're just different. They're just self-contained bits of work that you can do on an evening, and then in a couple of nights, you know, you've got a little vignette which looks good, doesn't it? The tables, when we next get to play on tables, the tables can look really good. I don't know when that will be.
They looked really nice on Twitter, I thought. I mean, it's always it's fun when you're trying to ruin something as opposed to just make it pristine and factory built.
I do it all the time.
I'll set that one up for you there, Rich. But you know, the Tiger you did, I thought looked really, really good. And the other things which you saw, they're very nicely weathered to destruction. But it is quite testing to do, because you sometimes need to sort of open up the internals of it. It's a bit like a ruined building. Yeah. I think Tricky once said to me they're doubly difficult because you've got to model them inside and out as opposed to just the frame.
Well, you've got to be able to,
fun to do.
You've got to be able to open the hatches and do things that you can't do with resin. So resin kits are really hard to make look like they're damaged, because they generally come in one piece, and you can't. Yeah. You know, you can't take wheels off or take tracks off or anything like that. But with kits, of course, you've got the option to do that.
Very good.
What's your plan, Sid?
What's my plan? Well, I have been painting quite a bit, actually. So I posted a couple of the blog posts, or posts on my blog relating to what I have been painting. It's all 17th century stuff. I've got a lot more to post, which I have painted. But my lockdown project is really to get my French cavalry finished. And there's only really one big mass of cavalry to do, which is the French gendarmerie, which are going to be fun to do. So I've got those lined up. But also, I take part every year in something called the Analog Hobbies Painting Challenge, which starts in December, runs for 3 months, run by our friend Kurt Campbell. And he's got me doing a couple of things for the challenge relating to the map, which I did last year, so I'll do it again this year, so that'll be fun. And I'll be getting ready for the challenge. And I think one of the things I find every year with doing that is that in the summer, I'm often quite busy in the garden and doing things, and spring, summer, autumn, there's a lot of garden work. But when the nights get longer, you can't really be outside as much. There's less work to do in the garden. So actually lockdown happening now, November time, it's not the worst thing in the world. And as you say, Nick and Rich, you know, you've got to look at the positives. And the positive is I'd be inside anyway, bunkered down. So possibly, hopefully, not going to notice too much difference as to what I'd normally be doing about this time of year anyway. Obviously, it's not great missing shows like Antwerp, but you've got to turn that into a positive, and connecting with people regularly on Zoom or whatever chat sort of medium you've got is a great way to make positives out of a difficult situation. Having a plan, I think, is one of those ways that over the course of the year has really helped. So I keep a painting diary, I work out what I'm going to try and do, try and sort of do a little bit more than I've done, say, the previous month, keep things ticking over. And I think all of those things help to keep the momentum going. And the nice thing about a hobby is that, you know, you're not only doing things, but you've got things to show at the end of it. Like you say, Nick, you've got a table which is, when we do actually return to playing, it's going to be full of great looking miniatures, or you've built up a lot of terrain or scenery, and all those things I think kind of help keep the momentum going.
Yeah, that's going to be fun then. So tell me about your garden, Sid. Would you rather be gardening than wargaming? Because I've got the impression there that you love being outside and playing with your little gnomes.
I play from a vegetable patch. Yeah,
do you?
Yeah, I do like gardening. I've really got into it over the last sort of 5 years, but in particular this year, it's been great. So we've planted all kind of vegetables. I'm sure, like a lot of people, you know, we all thought perhaps back in March we'd run out of food. Well, certainly we haven't run out of food. We've got potatoes, carrots, leeks, courgettes, you know, brimming with vegetables at the moment. But it has been really great. And I don't think I've spent so long in the garden as I have done this year with working from home, and that's been a real pleasure. So we've done all sorts of kind of things in the garden. But I wouldn't say it's as good.
Will you be taking up pickling, Sydney? So you have
Nicola, my lovely wife, has suggested pickling. We've got 2 large apple trees, and she's also suggested cider pressing as well. So we're going back to some sort of Thomas Hardy existence. Just expect to call me Diggory Venn or something like that.
Mayor of Sydney Bridge.
Well, I think at that point, it's probably a good time to briefly go to the workshop to have a look at 1 or 2 of the things we might specifically have been building. I've got a great tip in the workshop, but let's go there first before I spill the beans on that one. Oh, let's make our way past all of these boxes. Oh, how many paintbrushes do you need, Richard? Honestly, it's looking a bit of a mess, so I can tell from here that you've been doing a lot of work in the workshop. So,
I have, actually. Yeah.
Come on, tell us about it all. Try not to put your foot in that wet palette, by the way.
I have been painting Aventine miniatures for my Punic Wars project, and I have to tell you, they are some stunningly beautiful figures. I've been got a unit here of Roman allies, Italian state Roman allies, and they are absolutely stunningly beautiful. And I've decided to paint my Romans first, Romans and allies, obviously, and then I'm going to go carry straight on with the Carthaginians. But I've been prepping the Carthaginians and getting them ready because you've obviously got to glue on things like shields and spears and so on and so forth. And I like to do that well in advance because I find the glue sets better the longer you leave it. So I've been doing a lot of sticking as well as some painting. And today, before we hooked up, I've been putting on some shield transfers onto the Aventine miniatures. I've been trying a bit of a mix and match things with my Carthaginians. I've got some really nice figures from Crusader miniatures as well, which look like sort of veteran Carthaginian infantry. It's some of them in the sort of Roman chainmail armour. And I decided to do some of Hannibal's veteran troops who are using Roman equipment. So I actually bought some shields from Victrix because I really like the little big man transfers and they fit on the Victrix shields. So I've been gluing the Victrix plastic shields onto the metal Crusader infantry to get those veterans done. So a lot of messing about, if you like, a lot of dabbling at this, that, and the other to try and get a bit of variety in these Roman veterans.
So how do they work then, Rich, with these stickers? Do you have to paint the shield the base colour, do you?
No.
Okay, so tell us about them then.
You paint the shield white, and then what you do, let me show you on here. Okay, so here's a pack of shield transfers, right? They're really nice. They're white, and you can see a sort of wild boar or whatever it is across the top. Yeah. What you do, it's a bit of a faff. Let's not pretend these are easy. It is not like a sheet of decals from Airfix where you put them in water, lift them off and plonk them straight on. With the problem with the shield is you've got a lot of things like the ridge down the middle of the shield and the shield boss. So what you actually have to do is cut these out individually and then use a sharp knife to cut out the central section so it's going to fit directly onto the shield. And often with shields, what you have to do is cut it into 2 halves. So if the shield boss is here, you have this half and this half. So it is a faff, there's no doubt about it. But then what you do is you cut it out, leaving the plastic sheet on the front. Leave it so you've got a sheet of plastic on the front of this transfer. And then when you're ready to put it on, you peel off the plastic and you push it on like that. So it's kind of the opposite way round to an Airfix decal. You actually put it face down onto the model, and then you paint the cardboard that is on the back, or the sort of thick paper that is on the back of the decal, and then that peels off, and you're left with a really beautiful, stunning piece of artwork on the front of the shield.
I never realised that. I thought they were just like decals, really, where we put a base colour on and then they went over the top. So that's a completely different process to the one that I was imagining.
It's a totally different process, and it is not a 5-minute job. I mean, it took me about half an hour this morning to do 8 figures, because you're literally cutting them out. So it takes you 3 or 4 minutes each. But when they're done, and obviously you put something like Microsol on to soften the decal, and so it's all nice and flat. When they're done, they are stunningly beautiful, because they're really nicely produced. And what I then do is go over it with a paintbrush and just fill in any gaps and tart it up so it all looks like one complete piece. But they're really good.
And what's that Microsol stuff then?
It's a decal softener. So when you put and you can use it on any decals, like the Airfix ones. When you put it on, sometimes, you know, the tank is, or vehicle or plane or whatever, has got ridges on it, you know, or a sort of ribbing on an aircraft wing. And you put the Microsol on and it softens the decal, so it goes all, you know, flubbery. Is the only word I can think of. And that then allows it to adhere and mould itself onto any surface variations in the model that you've got. So it just softens the decal and allows it to adhere completely against the model. So you don't get that flat round saucer decal on an aircraft wing. It actually adheres to the you know, undulations of the wing, so to speak. And you get it in little bottles, and one bottle will last you, well, I think the ones I've got 2 bottles which I bought together about 15 years ago, and I'm only halfway through them, and the reason being is I spilt one of the bottles this morning. So yeah, good stuff. But the Little Big Man Studios studio decals are my suggestion for the best bit on the bench, so we'll see how that compares if anybody else has got anything, because they are really nice, and it's the type of thing that you overlook, and you don't think about something that small being really important. But without those, they're beautiful models, but without those decals, and those decals on a big Roman scutum is the biggest thing that you see on the model. So it's so important, and they are beautiful. Sid?
Well, yeah. It sounds like that's really one of those things that takes a bit of time but really makes a difference to the figure. And I always think that in those ancient armies, whether it's hoplites or Romans or Carthaginians, or even up to the medieval period and things like Pavises, being able to have transfers to really bring those aspects to life really makes those armies, I mean, they just look superb when they're done. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, they're going to be lovely.
I don't have a best bit on the bench. I do have a top tip for the terrain cupboard, though. And somebody mentioned this on our War Games Club, on the St Albans War Games Club, not the WhatsApp group, the other week. And it's a tip which only involves toilet paper and PVA glue. And I was sceptical about it. You may be wondering what on earth I'm doing with toilet paper and PVA glue. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we
Answers on a postcard.
No, answers on a postcard. I'm going to tell you about it now. So one of the things that I've been doing for the TooFatLardies annual this year is a couple of terrain articles. One's about building terrain with a small footprint, and the other one's about building micro terrain as a sort of campaign tool. I posted on my blog some tiles I've been making on a hexagon basis earlier this autumn. I've been doing some more, really, for the article for the annual, and some of the tiles relate to coastline tiles, and I wanted a way to try and simulate the water of the sea coming against the coastline. And somebody posted on the WhatsApp group that you can do this by toilet paper and PVA, and I thought this is just like ludicrous. This is just an insane idea that somehow you could take an ordinary roll of toilet paper and cover it with PVA. But the trick is to basically
to unroll it.
You unroll the toilet paper, you just need a couple of sheets, cut the toilet paper to fit the terrain, and normally 1 sheet, but you could use 2. And
one sheet?
1 or 2 sheets, just to try out the method to start with. And then you basically brush on the PVA, and the PVA completely soaks the toilet paper. So you think that you've just got an absolute mush. So using the brush to sort of stipple the toilet paper, lots of PVA on it, and you're just thinking, this is just ridiculous, I've just ruined my terrain. So you then use the brush to try and make wave effects in this mushy sort of almost papier-mâché thing that you've created on your lovely terrain. And you let it dry, and hey presto, amazingly, it looks just about the most realistic water I've ever seen. Far better than using solid water, because you've got undulations. You can make it as wavy as you want, or as calm as you want. It's amazingly realistic. It takes paint really well. It's very durable because it's PVA. And you can dry brush it as well. So you get some great sort of wave crest effects in respect of the terrain. It's so easy to do. It's just laughably easy. It is a roll of normal toilet paper and normal PVA glue, just brushed on. It takes no time to do. And it is a really great tip. So that's one of the things that we'll be covering in the Lard Annual.
Oh, brilliant. Can I ask, when it dries, does it dry in a sort of plastically sort of clear looking finish, or do you have to paint it? Because when you use PVA, I mean, it does dry clear. And I've used PVA previously to paint onto paper that I've used for things like flags. And it does give it a sort of translucent, or from what I remember, it gave it sort of translucent, semi-opaque sort of finish. Does it do that when you slap it on your coastline?
That's very much the effect that you get. Now, bizarrely, you'd think, well, if it's white toilet paper and you've got PVA, you're left with a white sort of looking sea. But actually, the PVA soaks into the toilet paper, and the toilet paper almost becomes translucent, and the PVA is invisible on it. So what you're left with is, rather than a gloopy thick mess that you might be left with yacht varnish or solid water or whatever you're using, you're left just with the toilet paper, which is almost translucent, the PVA, which is invisible, and that takes paint really well, as PVA normally would. So even without painting, you've got something which would, which looks very water-like. Yeah. And obviously with painting or with staining or inking or whatever you want to use, you've got really just a perfect-looking sea, as rough, as choppy, as calm as you really want.
And do you then add a layer of varnish or something on top of that to give it a sort of glossy look? Or?
Yeah, so what I've done is I've painted it just with normal Vallejo paints, and then, because it's quite a small area on these terrain tiles, and then I've just covered it with a thin coat of gloss varnish, and it looks very waterish.
No, well, that is a top tip for the terrain cupboard, Sydney. I'm not sure that really works. I mean, should be top tip for something else, shouldn't it? Top tip. I don't know.
I'm not sure it's very socially responsible for us to be encouraging people to go out and buy toilet paper at the moment.
I don't think Sydney's method for representing a coastline will result in a run on toilet paper. I think other people might be responsible for causing that.
Well, I would say though, Sid, I've been making some shell holes, some shell craters, some rubble areas. Using just some MDF bases and then building it up with polystyrene and bits of spare MDF and bricks, etc. And the odd shell hole in there that I've been using that. I don't know what it's called. It's a sort of water that train enthusiasts use. That you just pour it out and it settles and it looks really lovely and clear.
Is that the Vallejo?
I don't think it is the Vallejo one. I didn't research this. Obviously, I can find it in my in the cupboard. But it's my nervousness about it is that I know that when you first do it, it looks fantastic, and for the first month or 2 months, it looks great. But I just have a suspicion that something in my head tells me that over time it dries up and it becomes a bit more cracky. So I'd be interested if your toilet paper dries up over time, or if that stays looking fantastic forever.
I think we should avoid the association with toilet paper and cracks.
Well, I don't have a best bit for the bench.
I win.
No. But what I would say is I have a content. I guess it's a product recommendation, folks. Yeah. But I'd put out a shout on Twitter about grass tufts. And because I've run out of grass tufts and I wanted to get some more. Normally what I do, and the reason this is so hard for me, is that one of the things I normally buy at shows is grass tufts. I go round and I say, that looks really nice, I'll get that one, And of course, when I get home, I sort of take them out of the packet. I've got no idea where they came from, or, I can never go back to the same place to buy the same tufts because I don't know where I got them from. So I had to put a shout out for, where can I get some decent tufts? And I had a great shout out for somebody on eBay called Tajima One, which I went with in the end. Now, there are really good tufts around as well from others. I also got some from Green Stuff World. But I used these Tajima One tufts I was talking about that Humber that I did. Because one of the ways that I disguised it was to have it, it's driven into a bush. And so the main part of where the print fails is sort of hidden inside the bush, and there's this big sort of I don't know what it is, like a bush, yeah, a bush. And the bush is a combination of tall bush and small bush, and together they look really effective. So I would say that Tajima, when I looked through what else is available on this person's eBay store, there's some really good stuff, and the tufts that I've got through have been really good quality, really pleasing. They're not cheap, but I would recommend them.
They go a long way, don't
they? But I don't know if I don't know. I really don't feel that it's the best bit on the bench. I mean, the shields have really impressed me, Rich. And the thing with Ancients is, it's got to look consistent, hasn't it? You can paint your shield, and I've seen people paint shields, and I've seen people do a great job. My nervousness would be, could I do 16 shields that all look brilliant? Because you've only got to have one that looks a bit shit, and the whole thing is lost, isn't it?
The whole thing goes, yeah. I years ago, and you'll remember this because it was the first game you played at the club, I painted up a load of medieval figures, Essex miniatures, and I did all the heraldry by hand. In those days, I could, I had really good eyesight, and well, I never had a steady hand, to be fair, but I could paint reasonably well in those days. And you would spend ages doing this little retinue of maybe 10 figures, because the whole game was based around retinues. And 9 of them would be great, and the 10th one would be rubbish. And it's like the one figure with googly eyes is always the one who's at the front in the pictures. So it was a bit like that. But yeah, no, so these I definitely will take that as being the best bit on the bench is Little Big Man Studios shield transfers. But combine them with Aventine miniatures and you have a thing of tremendous beauty. So it's a kind of twin best bit on the bench there for Punic War recommendations. But yeah, Little Big Man definitely need a real shout out. And it's important not to go, yeah, it's the big models that are the best bit on the bench. Sometimes it's the little things like tufts and like shield decals that really turn something pretty ordinary with my painting skills into something that really stands out.
Totally agree. Good shout. We have a winner. So well done, guys. That was an excellent workshop. And I think that leaves us about time to have a word from our sponsors before we walk back to the studio.
I must get through to Sergeant Watson's position. Jenkins, cover me.
Sir.
Whoa. Sergeant Watson, bring your men in. Withdraw.
It's all right, sir. We're enjoying ourselves.
What?
Yes, sir. It's these here chain of command rules, sir. We're having great fun.
Chain of command?
That's right, sir. It's a challenging but fun blend of command and control. It gives me the freedom I want to fight the way I want to. Never had so much fun, sir.
And we've cooked you some sausages.
Can't be helped, sir. Me and the lads are staying put.
Chain of Command World War II platoon level rules from TooFatLardies. They really put you in control. And they're even better than sausages.
And we're back. We're back in the studio. So here we go with question and answers. So we do have a bulging postbag, which we're mainly going to hold over to a later show. But I did promise to a very special friend of the show that I would read out his question in full so we could all answer it. So here we go with a question from Mike Hobbs from the lovely land of Wales. And Mike made me promise to read it all in full. Quotes, ladies and gentlemen. My darling Sydney, it seems a lifetime since we last engaged in intellectual discourse. How I've missed those late night chats. But I mustn't dally. The game's afoot and I need to ask a very important question. Social media seems to be a wonderful way for gaming companies to keep in touch with their customer base. And a well-crafted treat can easily reach many thousands of people, or tens of thousands if you include a picture of a cat. I know that TooFatLardies have embraced social media in its many forms and have a huge following. So I have to ask, is the amount of time companies spend engaging in this interaction worthwhile from a business perspective? or is it just a vanity thing? And also, why is it that TooFatLardies doesn't follow your wonderful Twitter account? Are they trying to tell you something? Lots of love, Mike. Unquotes. So that is Mike's great question. I promised him yesterday we would read that in full. So there we go, Mike. Social media, is it just a vanity thing, or is the time spent worthwhile? I mean, you are the two guys we need to ask that probing question to, Richard and Nick.
Who do you want to go first?
I want Nick to go first.
Yeah, he want me to go first. Social media is just an interesting place to hang out and chat to people, isn't it? Really, I mean, there's so much stuff, so many photographs of cats, and so many photographs of breakfast. I put my own breakfast photo on there this morning, which, by the way, I managed to eat my breakfast in a world record time to finish it in time to get on the Oddcast. I think it's perfect for the kind of community that we live in, that we play in, that we conduct our games in. It's a very simple way for people to come together to share what they're doing, share some lovely photos of their toys, and share some interesting timelines. Well, I follow people from all. I follow lots of stuff as well as wargaming, but I've really interested about history threads and wargaming threads, and like to support and share what we can. It's great to see people playing TooFatLardies games, and great to see and share some of that fun. But we don't. I mean, I'm on there as Dozy Bugger. It's not a corporate thing for me. I haven't got a thing on my strap line that says, these are my own individual views and not the views of TooFatLardies or whatever, because I don't think it works like that. We're not a big PLC business. It's just, we are part of the community, and we like to share in that. Rich?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, funnily enough, while you were rabbiting on there, I just went on Twitter to see what the last things I tweeted were about. Well, it was about Welsh rugby, and it was about Jaffa cakes. Quite frankly, and I also noted that I actually follow 23 people, and I don't know how many thousands following me, but the reason I only followed 23 people, I think they were the first 23 people on day one when I went on Twitter, that I just followed those people. And ever since then, I've never bothered to follow anybody else, because those 23 people fill my day with tweets. If I added any more, I wouldn't get any work done. So I felt it would be rude to unfollow the people I'd already followed. But I think that when people post corporate tweets, oh, look at our new release, we've just released this, I just don't even look at them. I'm not interested in really what their new release is, because I'll probably see it in 100 other different media as well. I just want, the reason I go on Twitter is I want to have a laugh with people and talk to my mates.
I think the other side of that is, the truth is that if you want to reach people with your new product, then leaking it, announcing it on social media is exactly the way to do that, because people then will get to see it. They're following you because they're interested in you in the first place, presumably, and therefore they're going to see it. They're more likely to interact with it. Social media is you understand why businesses push their stuff through that channel. Look at, there's some interesting stuff, isn't there? We looked at sort of Facebook and Twitter, etc. And Facebook has a very, very big reach. There are very many groups on Facebook that are around TooFatLardies. There's one TooFatLardies page on Facebook, but there are 30 or 40 TooFatLardies pages, a Kiss Me Hardy page, Bag the Hun, Chain of Command, Infamy, I Ain't Been Shot Mum. They've all got their own sort of groups on Facebook, which are completely run by not us. They're all set up by other people. They're just for sharing. It's just for sharing the games that they play. But Facebook seems to have one network, one form of reach, and Twitter has another form of reach. Some people are on Facebook and Twitter. Some people are just on Facebook. Some are just on Twitter. And there are other forms of social media that only young people understand, like Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that. I don't know is really the answer to Mike. I mean, Mike himself is a man for having good laugh on occasion on Twitter. I don't think he's a Facebooker. but there's such a really good gaming community on Twitter. So, for instance, look at the Brunswickers hashtag. So, an email exchange between Stephen in Australia and myself. I never met the guy. He's never met me. Just an exchange of Twitter, and next thing you know, there's a hashtag going, #Brunswickers, and people all over the world are painting Brunswickers. That doesn't mean everybody in the world is painting Brunswickers, but they are located all over the world. And it just shows the power and the engagement of this as a tool for just energizing people and just connecting out and forming a community.
This is what I always bang on about. The whole War Games community is one big club now, and we can all be as immersed in that and involved in that as much or as little as we want. And the fact that you're able to go on that, when I'm working, when I've got a busy day, I might think I'll have a cup of coffee now and I'll have a break for 5 minutes. What I do is I go on Twitter, not because I'm going on there going, oh, look, I'm promoting the latest product from TooFatLardies. I'm going on there and I'm making fun of Fat Matt because he's 2 pounds heavier than me, or I'm, talking to somebody about Jaffa cakes or about rugby. That's not TooFatLardies corporate bollocks. That's Richard Clark talking the type of crap you talk when you're in a normal work environment, or club environment, or pub environment, just having a laugh with your mates. And the fact that I'm on there as TooFatLardies is nothing to do with the business. It's just to do with the fact that when I set up the account, somebody said, oh, you better go on as TooFatLardies. So I did, but I didn't think about it any more than that. That's it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, isn't it? It's very much replaced, certainly for those of us who have been in lockdown, are in lockdown, etc. It's replaced what we would normally chat to people about. I think that social media is also really inspiring as well. It's one of those things that from the Brunswicker Challenge, from other things, there's a young lady who's had, I tweeted about last night, a post from Duncan Rhodes, well-known painter from X Games Workshop, about a young lady called Heather, who's learned to paint again with her offhand after her dominant hand was amputated, which is simply incredible, simply incredible. And it's things like that which are really inspiring, and you're able to sort of tweet about things like that and spread the word about things like that for everyone's benefit. So I think just thinking about Twitter as a conversation which relates to just marketing, it's really not the best use of it, not the most fun use of it. And I think most of us who enjoy seeing things from people that we respect or we follow or admire or enjoy spending time with, we're not doing that just to see their products. We want to know more about them as people. So there's a kind of a strange sort of hinterland between work, marketing and sociability, but that's kind of the way of our world at the moment. Those boundaries have really blurred in the last 10, 15 years.
It's a pub. Twitter, to me, is just a boozer. Yeah. You go in there and you have a laugh with your mates. That's it. It's not a marketing tool.
It's actually proved invaluable. I think, we talk about mental well-being, and it's important actually during this lockdown, during this period of the last 6 months where we've been under this dreaded virus. Imagining the world of gaming without the ability to have that connection. Imagine what your wargaming world would have been if you had no social media connections. It would have been nothing. It would have been very, very difficult. And I think it's enhancing the mental well-being of people across the hobby. And I think that really counts for a lot. And I think there's a really supportive community as well. That if you post things on Twitter, you post your photos of your figures on Twitter that you've just been painted. Everybody, all the comments you'll get will be, love it, well done, great basing, love the way you've done that, what figures are they? They'll all be creative and productive posts. You won't get anybody who's saying, what a load of shit that is, how dare you post photos like that on Twitter. Although I'm sure that the next time I post something, there will now be that line on it. But it's hugely supportive. That's the point I'm trying to make, and hugely inspiring when you see some of the work that other people do. Yes, there are some fantastic figure painters on Twitter, really, really good quality stuff, but there's also a lot of average Joes like you and I creating stuff, and in just one or two tips you can pick up from them in that exchange is just good.
Yeah, somebody posted some pictures of some front rank British the other day, and they were beautifully painted. And I spent a good 10 minutes looking at those pictures just to think, how did he do that? Because the buttons really popped out. So it was a case of, what's he used? Has he used a bit of a wash around the button? And just looking, and he also did some tartan bands around the shakos. And it's the ability to take a bit of time. It's not like picking somebody's figures up at a club. You can actually stare at the screen for 10 minutes and what he's done without looking like some pervert who's about to run off with somebody's figures. So it's good. It's excellent.
Just you wait until you see my toilet paper and PVA. You're staring at that for hours.
Staring at your crap.
Some of it might even be applied to terrain. You never know.
Have we answered all of Mike's questions now? Then I mean, we still
We've
don't know
Mike's
if is Richard going to follow you or not.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to follow. I'm not following any more people because what happens is the people I follow retweet things that they see, and I see it anyway. So I've selected very carefully those 23 people, and they give me a window on the entire hobby.
Fortunate indeed, of the 23, as it will now be known. Well, that's splendid. So thank you, and well done, the 23. Those of us who are not in the 23, well, that's just tough luck for the rest of the world.
I'm going to have a look now to see who they are. I know that I am one of them. At the moment, I'm one of them.
It's an eclectic bunch.
Well, and then you have to see who's number one out of that 23. Let's not speculate, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's have a look at that.
Let's move on to a different big issue, not that big issue, just after this break.
Sydney roundward. He's got red trousers.
So we're back after that break. And we wanted to chat about our big issue for the day because we've had a lot of reaction to recent discussions, which we talked about on the Oddcast, about the possibility of the imminent death of the hobby and the suggestions for promoting the hobby and the way we run games. So thanks for everyone on that last big issue we talked about. One subject which came up as a follow-up from that is a bit more focused than just the hobby. And this was raised by one of our friends, Ken Riley, known as the Yorkshire Gamer, has a blog that I always enjoy reading. And
was that a Yorkshire accent, Sid? Was that a Yorkshire accent?
That was a Yorkshire accent.
Did you from Yorkshire?
I can't quite do the accent very
It's
well.
the worst Yorkshire accent I've ever heard by anybody, let alone a Yorkshireman.
It's a long time since I've been to Yorkshire.
Proves you're a fake Yorkshireman, Sid.
Well, in the East Riding, you don't have the broad accents that you get in North Yorkshire and West Yorkshire.
Aye.
Anyway, let's not derail our big issue about the wonderful county of Yorkshire and how fantastic it is, because we'd just be here all day. But instead, we'll go back to Ken's question, which was big gaming games. Are they dead? And in Ken's blog, there's a very good post about the question that he thinks that the days of the big war game have become much less frequent, given the arrival of smaller, large skirmish games, which are easier to stage, quicker to get on the table. And such games, if anything, have probably been more popular during the lockdown because of COVID isolation. But I thought today we might discuss about whether we feel that the big game is still viable as an alternative to smaller skirmish games. Richard, lead us off on this charge.
No, I want you to define what you mean by a big game. Now, we could refight the Battle of the Somme with 80 figures, if we had one figure per battalion. Or do you mean games with many, many hundreds of figures? The classic Peter Gilder-esque big game.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the main questions, isn't it? What makes a big game? And I think what Ken's talking about is Ken is comparing smaller games, smaller physical space, smaller number of figures, with the big game which involves a larger area and many, many figures. So instead of a skirmish or large skirmish game with maybe 100 figures on the table, what about games which we perhaps used to see maybe more in the past with 200 or 300 up to 1,000 or 1,500 figures on the table? I think that's the big game that Ken's really talking about.
The classic
game that we all know from shows, and maybe we've known because we've put them on ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? What it puts me in mind of, Sid, is that very famous question that was put to. Do you remember Debbie McGee, who was married to the magician?
Paul Daniels.
Yeah, and she was asked, "Tell me, what was it that first attracted you to the millionaire Paul Daniels?" And And it's a bit like, what is it about small, easy to put on games that you find attractive? Well, it's the fact that they're small and easy to put on, isn't it? I mean, big games are potentially a big effort. They need potentially lots of space, and you potentially need lots of figures. So they're quite a hard thing to jump straight into, aren't they? I guess, or are they? Depends on the scale you're going to do them at. If you're looking at those fantastic games, that the Peter Gilder-esque games of the, when would they have been, of the 60s and 70s, I guess, when you're looking at what, a 20-foot table? My dining table is pretty big, but it isn't 20 foot long. So I think we have to recognise the growth in gaming. Those games still exist, but probably as a proportion of the hobby, they are a much smaller proportion than they ever were, I suspect. What do you guys think?
They make great games for club projects, I'd say. Yeah. You know, one of the things that I think we've all enjoyed over the last 20 years, we used to have lard days and people used to come over to the club in St Albans, and we used to have 10, 15 people participating either on a single table or on multiple tables as part of the same sort of mini campaign or mini game. We had tables which were laid out in really imaginative ways. I always remember the 2005 game of Stalingrad, which we did as a capital letter E. The tables were shaped like an E, so you had the German access points at the ends of the three bits of the letter E, and the Russians defending the longer side. And those games, I think, always stand out in the memory, but they don't stand out as an individual achievement. It wasn't that we all just painted all the figures for one side ourselves. We brought many collections of figures and terrain to the club, and it was a big club project with our friends. So as club projects and as projects relating to things like birthdays, we did Waterloo on Daz's birthday, we did the big sort of Russian game on my birthday. I think as commemorations and celebrations, they work really well. And we did Trafalgar and Austerlitz in 2005. So I think like that, there's always been a place for big games, and that does continue. But I kind of am with you, Nick. You know, the reason that small, easy to handle games are popular is because they're small and easy to handle.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it, that this subject seems to be quite a prickly one in some areas of the hobby. When we were in lockdown, I ran a game based on the Battle of, can't remember what it was, First World War, great big First World War game that I did anyway.
Well, around what, Amiens.
The Battle for Amiens. You know, we were talking about a battle which was involving about 3 million men, but at the same time, we'd done something on YouTube, and I can't remember if it was on Lard TV or it was one of the Oddcasts, or I think I was actually being interviewed on another show, and somebody commented on there, Richard Clark, you've done more damage to historical wargaming than anybody I can ever think of, because you've destroyed the big game, coming out with all these skirmish games you do, and that's not real gaming. And I said, well, that's funny you should say that, because I've just been running a game involving 3 million men in the First World War. But I know what the guy meant in terms of he felt that wargaming should be hundreds, if not thousands of figures on a great big table, and that anything else was a pale imitation of it. Well, I think he's wrong in some respect, in as much as I think we now exist in a world where the majority of people coming into gaming don't come at it from looking at pictures of Peter Gilder's games or Don Featherstone's games and expect to have to paint up thousands of figures. They're far more likely to have come from a Games Workshop background where 20 or 30 figures is more the norm. And when you think that's the norm, that's kind of what you look for. You played Space Pixies and you want to have another game more historical because you're coming back into the hobby, and you think, oh, 20, 30 figures, that looks like the stuff I've done before, but a bit more historical. So I think there's an expectation of people coming into the hobby who are maybe not seeing one particular type of game as normal, but I think in a hobby, there's no normality. It's what we want to do. And I think it's wrong to say, you're enjoying the wrong type of game. The funny thing is, I write small unit action games because I'm very interested in the detail of infantry tactics and how they've developed. Now, if I want to really examine that, there's no point in me doing a game where you've got line and column and that's about it. I want to see a more granularity. So I have to turn up the microscope, and I need to look at platoon level games and similar size games, because that's where you can really see the nitty gritty detail of the way troops fight. That's the way that's the thing I'm primarily interested in. Having said that, I do have Franco-Prussian War collections where I can field 30 battalions per side. It's just I don't happen to play that type of game anymore, because I'm enjoying, that was the start actually of my focus on understanding and developing a real interest in how troops fought, because that's really the period in military history where you start to see breech loading rifle coming in, which obliges a change in infantry tactics because of the volume of firepower that's put out. But then my own personal journey took me more into smaller unit actions and examining them. I'm not holding a gun to people's head and saying, this is the hobby changing, I don't want you playing big battle games anymore. This just happens to be what I'm interested in. So I think there's a huge space for big battle games if that's what you and your mates enjoy. Nick?
I think that's really interesting. And while you were talking there, I was reflecting on, when you look back at the hobby, you said about Featherstone, we said about Peter Gilder, etc. Of course, back in the day, when you think about war games back in the day, it was big battle gaming, but they're also using big figures. They're using big. These days, we've never had a broader range of products available to us to game with, and to potentially play big games on a small table. Now, we've once upon a time 6mm was a brand new thing. Now, of course, 2mm is something that lots of people are very interested and excited about. And we all know how big a table can be. If you put 2mm figures on it, you've suddenly got Austerlitz in its entirety. Whereas on and you've got it on a dining table. So this is really interesting, because we are at the time now where actually we are able to put on big battle games, probably in a way that we've never been able to before. But the point could be that we don't have those products available to bring those games out there, the rule sets to go with it, and the maybe just the understanding, and I don't know what else we'd need to have to make that happen. It's an interesting thought. Do you think?
Yeah, one of the games that I played this week, funnily enough, was with Mark Backhouse, who writes a lot for Wargame Soldiers and Strategy, and he's developing a set of rules for really big battle ancients. We fought a battle between Caesar and Gallic tribes, where Caesar had 6 legions present, plus a couple of groups of allied cavalry from the Gallic forces, I think it was the Boii, and also Numidians. And I was controlling a Gallic army, which was, many thousands of figures of men, probably 50, 60,000 men. So a colossal battle. But that was done with home sculpted 2mm armies. A Roman legion was on a base, I don't know, he did tell me it was in metric, so about 5 inches by 3 inches in real money. And that looked absolutely superb. And the battle looked like a real big battle. But I know many people who would say that is not big battle gaming. And in fact, I know quite a few people who'd say 2mm isn't a figure scale, but they're wrong, because it was.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because just because one game works doesn't invalidate another game.
Yeah.
And I would say that big game wargaming isn't dead. But I can see that things are changing, because just like you're interested, and I've always been interested in that smaller scale tactics as I am, one of the things which increasingly interests me is the bigger battles, the battles which really make a change to history. You can trace back historical changes to a battle, to the uncertainty of battle and the results of a battle. And I think you tend to get those types of engagements with the larger battles through history. Yeah. But with the different figure scales, as Nick says, and the ability to scale down, compress that action into a game which in table size is more manageable, I think you can still have that experience, and perhaps there's more figures around at the moment. than not. The other thing with the big battles, the Peter Gilder type of thousands of figures on the table, the thing which I think has sometimes been a difficulty when we've played those is that it can turn out to be a bit of a traffic jam of battalions. You have a certain amount of terrain, but you don't always have, even if you have the flanks, which you can do with a hugely long table, say 18 or 20 feet, you never get the depth of a real battle. If you think about a Napoleonic artillery battery, or the heavier artillery which would be deployed in a Renaissance period, the train for that, the actual logistics of getting those guns onto the battlefield would be such an action of depth that you can rarely simulate that on a table. So even when you pack the table with 40, 50 battalions a size, and it's a huge long table, you've got the element of scale, but you haven't necessarily got the true elements of flanks. I remember once when we played Waterloo, it's not a battle I know a huge amount about, but the more I was thinking about it in the context of helping out the French side, I was thinking, well, why don't we actually outflank? And then you do realise that on the flanks there are other corps which are deployed, which are out with the actual battle itself, which made perfect sense, but I didn't know at the time. And I think with a smaller scale you can get that sort of depth as well as breadth. But it's quite difficult to do that in a big game with 28mm because you just have a very thin table. You don't really get the same depth, which is critical when you read the histories. Rich?
I think a lot of that is due to the simple logistics of the length of human arms.
Yeah.
It is an unavoidable fact that you cannot have a table so bleeding big you can't move the figures. And consequently, one of the things I always find about those big Napoleonic battles with big, 36, 48 figure battalions is you do get a tremendous conflict between, the space that things take up on the table and what they would take up in reality. And they consequently tend, in my experience, to end up feeling a bit like a sort of Victorian toy soldier game to me. It's more of a game than you don't necessarily feel like I don't necessarily feel like I'm refighting a big battle. I am very interested and very keen, and I was only thinking about it in the last 36, 48 hours, in developing a set of rules for a really big battle, Franco-Prussian War and War of 1866, where you're controlling corps and armies. But the investment in time and effort to do that, and I was thinking about that inspired by Mark's 2mm games, is that even doing it in that scale, it would be a colossal investment in time and effort and creating new terrain and so on and so forth. And things like that make me think, I don't know if I'm going to be here for long enough. I've probably only got another 20 years wargaming in me, so embarking on a project that's going to take 10 years might not be the best use of time. But yeah, I think we all love, and we're all inspired by the visual impact of those big battle games. But in terms of, I would rather play a game of big chain of command than play with maybe 3 infantry platoons and a platoon of tanks per side than play a big Napoleonic game, because I would still, as a player, be controlling my platoon. And that gives me the type of action that I'm really interested in. So it's horses for courses. Nothing's right or wrong.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? I'm thinking about, you said about how much longer I've got left to game. Well, it depends, doesn't it, on lots of things. But, I think about gaming ambitions, and actually a lot of my gaming ambitions still revolve around big games. That Waterloo game that we fought was an ambition. I'd never fought Waterloo before, and that was an ambition of mine to fight that game and play that game. I'd love to play a big Gettysburg game. I've never played a big Gettysburg game. I'd love to play a big Gettysburg game. I really would. And so it's interesting that the ambitions towards gaming for me are sort of visual spectacular, and I'd love to play a bit more of those. And I think however, I also think that we have played really big games on small tables. We did the invasion of Crete in a in a community centre on how many tables did we have, Rich? 5 tables, something like that.
Yeah.
Perhaps 5 tables. We did the full, we did the German Calais 1940. We've done D-Day. We've done whichever one else, Stalingrad. We've done others as well. You think actually, if you're a bit creative with the way you use your chain, this was like IBSM, wasn't it? I think
it was IB Chapman. That's right.
You can still create some big games. It's just where you choose to have the focus. There is something special though about a big table full of lovely toys.
For me,
when we've done those games, we've also tried to work out how the rules work in those games. I remember some of the games back in the 90s that we played with tables full of figures, and we were trying to do them on WRG 6th edition Ancients.
Yeah.
And basically that was a really bad headache from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. So even when you do have those big games, I think when we've tried to do them, we've tried to split the table or split the action between different players, because it's always kind of a tension. If you've got 10 people playing, can they all play the same set of rules at the same time, the same period? It's quite
about engagement as well, isn't it? It's about whether or not people can actually take part in the game. If people like to watch, then it's perfectly okay for them to play the core on the left-hand side that does bugger all. But if people want a game, and then that's the challenge, isn't it? Too. Sorry, Sid, I interrupted you.
Well, I interrupted Richard. So.
Well, I'm uninterrupting Richard and cueing you again. I'm playing my chain of command dice to activate you, Sid.
Right. So now we've been activated. It's probably we can draw a few strands together. So to answer Ken's question, I think we feel that there is still a place for big battle gaming, but it's big battle gaming in particular sort of context that we enjoy, and it's also being savvy and smart about which big battles we stage and how we stage them, maybe.
I want to say something more than that, Sid. I think it's more than. I think we must retain big battle gaming in the hobby. I think it's essential, in fact, that it remains as part of the hobby. And I think that we have a role to play in ensuring that those games are enjoyed and accessible by people. I think those of us who are mature in our years and have extensive collections do have a bit of a responsibility around ensuring that big battle gaming does continue. Yeah, maybe there's a Darwinism aspect to it that it's got to be, if it's going to continue, it's got to change the way it works commercially, so that people are interested in actually investing in it and doing it. But I think there's a kind of a moral obligation for us to keep the torch of big battle gaming going in the hobby.
I don't feel any obligation to be that person who does that, though, because my interests lie elsewhere. And if I'm really honest, when I see a huge battle, if you were to say we're going to put on a huge battle with 60 battalions aside and refight Austerlitz or I don't know, whatever battle, I would go, okay, yeah, fine, I'll come along. But all through the day, I'm probably really looking forward to going to the pub and having a curry afterwards, because it's fine to have a laugh with your mates, but it's not the type of game that's working for me personally. But there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with me disliking, something that you like. That's just the way the world rocks, isn't it?
I think partly the issue there is that you get a different view on wargaming. So if somebody were to, if somebody were to look for a stock image of a war game, they're much more likely to find and choose a stock image of a Peter Gilder type big Napoleonic layout than they would be of a photo of Chain of Command, because actually to the uninitiated, that is what wargaming, historical wargaming, looks like. But I disagree with you, Rich. I do think it's an essential part of the hobby. I think it's an essential tradition of the hobby that would be a real shame if we lost it.
Oh yeah. I don't disagree with you there. It's just doesn't float my boat. I'm really happy for everybody else to go and do that if that's what they want to do. And that's the positive thing about the hobby. We can do what we want. We can play what games we want. We can enjoy the size battle we want. And there's no right or wrong.
Well, I think the other side about that then is if it is something that's important to you, then actually you've got to do something creative. You've got to make the future, haven't you? You can't just sit there and say, "Oh no, big battle gaming is dying," and just watch it. If you want to save it, then we have to do something to try and save it, to try and make it available and for people to sign up to it. Do something that makes it that attracts people to it. And we've spoken before about what makes games attractive. So, if people are out there with big battle projects, really interested to see what they are and to see how they go.
Yeah, I think that there's more than enough space for all three of us and everyone within the hobby to exist in that type of environment. So, some of us prefer different scales of games. Some of us do really enjoy the spectacle. I like the spectacle. I'm more interested in creating the environment of a big game which makes a difference historically. I'm not so keen on big games just for the sake of it. And I think, Richard, you made a really good point, and I know a lot of people have said this as well, is that the length of your arms and the amount of time you can spend gaming, those are really important. And I like that engrossing spectacle of a game. But I don't necessarily want to move 40 battalions, but I do want to get to the heart of a really key strategic moment of history. I want to create that moment when history changed at some fulcrum point of the battle, of a big battle, not a skirmish, but the point in a battle. And that doesn't need to involve hundreds and hundreds of figures, but it's the point at which history changed. That's what really kind of floats my boat.
I've got one more thing I want to say on it, Sid, and I know you're ready to move on. If I'm a canny gamer, I can have both. I can build my forces for sharp practice, and then I can consolidate them together with all the forces of my mates and play a big battle game with the same figures. And that's when you get a win-win, isn't it? When you and your mates come together to pool resources, create a big game out of all the smaller games that you've got in your repertoire.
Yeah, agree with that. Or you could buy all your 6mm figures from Pete Berry at Bacchus, and you could make a brigade your element of manoeuvre rather than the battalion, which has been so typical in the hobby forever. It's been the battalion, and play a game that is designed to replicate big battles in a scale that allows you to get a big battle on the table where your arms can reach the middle and have that scaled out appropriately. So there's lots of options, but just maybe not the options we used 30 years ago.
So it's all about healthy arms, lots of options, and healthy hobby as a result. So that's fantastic. So thank you, especially to Ken, for a really thought-provoking blog post. We all enjoyed that, Ken. And thank you for that big issue.
I've not read his blog post, but I'm going to go and do so.
It's a very good blog post. From Yorkshire Gamer.
Yorkshire Gamer.
Anyway, so at the end of the big issue, what we are now going to do is we're going to quickly tread a path towards the library, because I know we've all been locked down, and that has created some time for reading and research. And one of the things I'm interested to know is that if you were designing a big battle war game, what type of books would you be looking at? And not just the specific books, but what things are you trying to get out of the books to try and recreate that moment? So I'm going to go to you first, Nick. I know you've got 3 of those on your knee at the moment. So what are they?
I have indeed, Rich. Well, actually, I've only got 2 of those, 2 of the 3 that I'm going to talk about. The third one I've noticed is a gap in my collection, and it's one of those gaps that I think I really need to have this book just to fill the gap in my collection, but am I actually going to use it? So I'm going to talk about the books by Mark Adkin, the companion books. So these are they're very thick. I don't know what they are, 2 or 3 inches thick each, probably. Big, large landscape, coffee table books that describe in detail, in really, really brilliant detail, actually, big battles. So there's one on Gettysburg, which is the one that I've not got. There's one on Waterloo, which is brilliant. And there's one on Trafalgar, which is fantastic, and which I used extensively when we were doing that Trafalgar refight back in 2005. You're talking about a large volume book that explains the campaign in context, talks about the leaders, talks about the grand tactics, talks about the strategy, talks about the way units were composed, talks about the way that, I don't know, what men were paid and what they ate. It talks about very key pivotal moments in the campaign, picks on small sidebar stories that are central to the story. It gives you the development of the battle almost minute by minute in fantastic detail. And for each one of those books, I mean, they are wonderful. And every time I go back to them, I find something new in them. They're normally filled with Fantastic illustrations as well. So if you're painting figures for that battle, they are a really good source to go to in terms of what the soldiers were wearing. The Waterloo one in particular is fantastic for that, and some inspiring pictures, very much in the style of the Ospreys. I think it's actually the same artist that does the drawing. And they're brilliant. They're really, really worthwhile getting your hands on. They are not cheap these days. I think for the Waterloo one and the Gettysburg one, you can probably expect to pay well over £100. But however, I do think that the Trafalgar one is a bit more affordable. I don't know what that says about things, but it's actually a brilliant, brilliant book. So I would say if you're into big battle gaming, to get some inspiration, they're a great place to start, provided you're interested in the Battle of Gettysburg, the Battle of Waterloo, or the Battle of Trafalgar.
One-stop shops, aren't they? Real one-stop shops. They've got everything you want at all levels.
Yeah, they're brilliant books. Really, really. As I say, the Gettysburg one is not in my collection, and it's one of those things that every now and then I think maybe I should just buy it. Maybe I should just stick it up my coat next time I'm at Richard's house. Nobody had noticed.
No.
The Waterloo one's terrific. I've got the Waterloo one. I've really enjoyed reading that. And that was really helpful when we were doing Waterloo. When we did the game for Waterloo, it was invaluable because it was everything you needed to know as a starting point. Although I think then we went on to other things as well. But anyway, Richard.
Okay, well that's a really good starting point. And what I like about that choice is that they really are one-stop shop. They cover everything. You get pictures of the battle, you get the lovely maps of how they're laid out, but you also get the detail of how the figures should look and so on and so forth, and what they're armed with and how those weapons work. So, in terms of if you wanted a starting point, you never wargamed before and wanted to start off by playing the whole Battle of Waterloo, you could that one book, you could have a pretty good stab at writing your own rules and everything with the information that's in
Well,
there.
of course, they don't tell you anything about how to wargame it. That's the only thing.
No, they don't. That's true. But in terms of, having a lot of data about everything, they're really good. Now, I picked a book here that I picked up in France, which is the type of book that I like to read about. This is by a guy called Didier Laudieu, who is French, which is hence the name, and it's called Dying for Saint-Lô, Hedgerow Hell, July 1944. There's some fabulous books in France which are really good on details on battlefields, as you know, Nick. Things by what's that publishing house that's out there? That this is by
Heimat, isn't it?
Heimat. This is Histoire a collection. Heimdall. That's right. They've got some great books for things like the Battle of. The different battle of all the different D-Day beaches, so Omaha, Utah. And these books have got some really good sort of battle maps in, and lots of photographs, and lots of really good information about how the battle evolved and took place. And I like these books because this is not a big book about Normandy. This is a book specifically about the Battle for Saint-Lô. And it's written by somebody who is a military historian and who has an appreciation and is writing for military enthusiasts, which is ideal for the wargamer. The type of book that I would contrast this with would be something like Anthony Beevor's Battle for Stalingrad, Anthony Beevor's Battle for Berlin, which actually focus a lot more on the touchy-feely side of what it was, the more social history, what it was like to be there, what personal experiences you would have had in there, which are interesting for background reading. But when it comes to wargaming, they do tend to be like something I read just to give me that wallpaper in the background so I have a feel for the battle. But it's serious histories like this that give you the detail. There's another one here.
Sorry. Could you please repeat what you said?
Siri is.
Siri is giving you a book. Siri is giving you a book recommendation there.
It has, and it's this one. Hold on a minute. I'm going to throw him across the room now.
Mind the dice.
Right. It's this one. Siri said, "Hell's Gate." By Douglas E. Nash, The Battle for the Cherkasy Pocket. And again, you can see it's a big book. It's a thick book. It's got a lot of information in there, but it is very specific to the one battle. It's got lots of stuff in there, which is going to allow you to find out more about the battle. Here's another one, Sid. I know you've got Cambrai 1917 by Bryn Hammond, one of the classic books of the Great War. And again, big thick book, all about one battle. If you're going to do a battle, these type of books, which are about the military history, are much, much better than big coffee table. Let's read all about the Battle of Stalingrad, which is actually that social history. So it's the more political history, the more specific military stuff that I read.
I'd offer up Carl Lyon's book on Gallipoli in the same vein as that Cambrai book there. You know, it's interesting because when you focus on these big battle books, you look at one battle, but then of course they tell you so much about the wider war.
They do.
Within that as well. So even if it's not a battle you intend to play, then you will, you know, if you read it, you'll educate yourself as to the wider history.
That book, another great example of really focusing in even more, is the book on setcraft in Arnhem, which really, you know the one I've got on my shelves. I don't have it to hand, but that is fabulous because that really does focus on a very small piece of the action, and the amount of detail in that is absolutely phenomenal from both sides. And that's the other important thing, that you find a book that is good for covering both sides in what's been happening in that action. So, for example, I've just read a book by James Holland on the battle for the admin box in Burma in 1944. It's a really, really well written and very, very interesting book. But from a wargaming point of view, it's a background story because it focuses very much on the experience of the British and Commonwealth and Empire forces who were present. It doesn't give me a lot of insight into what the Japanese were doing and thinking. So for recreating the battle, not ideal. For background information, lovely.
I'm going to throw another one in, which I really must do because it's one that's shouting very loudly inside my head at me. A book that I've spoken about before, and a book that got me into wargaming. It's the book called The War Game, edited by Peter Young from the 1970s, I think. You know, I noticed you can get a copy on Amazon for about £8. But it's got 10 big battles from history, and they're recreated as war games. So you can look at the war game of each one, and they're very much in that Peter Gilder style. In fact, they're probably photos of his games. You've got Thermopylae, Agincourt, Edge Hill, Blenheim, Lobositz, Saratoga, Austerlitz, Waterloo, Gettysburg, and Al Alamein, all in one volume. So if you want to, each probably battle has about 6 or 8, 10 pages to it. I don't know what, but it's one of those kind of eye candy books, inspirational books. If you just need something light to go through, it's not quite on the same level as the book on the Cherkasy Pocket. That's a bit more specialist, but sometimes you want something quite lighter just to flick through, don't you?
Yeah. So picking up on a few of those points, and I'll come to mine in just a moment. I think that Peter Young book on the war game is really useful because I think some of the difficulties is just translating all the massive information into the tabletop game, and that Peter Young book does that really well. It does that really well to sort of cut through everything which you have found out and try and reduce it into a practicable, plausible game, and I think that's really at the heart of what we're trying to do. Picking up on another couple of things, the Mark Atkin books are really good, and there's also a much smaller book called The Charge, which he wrote about Balaclava, which I think is a really excellent account of the Heavy Brigade and the Light Brigade at Balaclava.
He's quite prolific, actually. He's got lots of good books. I can't tell you the title off the top of my head, but every time I come across his name, it tends to be associated with something that's very worth a read.
Yeah, very good. The Bryn Hammond book on Cambrai is one of my favourite First World War books. Yes. I think when I read that, there's another very good book by Ian Verinder, which is about just one company of the tank called B Company, which is just a brilliant book about their experiences in the war. But one thing with Cambrai and Bryn Hammond is that even better than that book is his PhD thesis, which he took Cambrai from, which is really interesting because in the thesis, which is available online, which he very generously, Professor Hammond, put it online, then goes on to talk about Passchendaele and the Tank Corps' role in Passchendaele, and that, if anything, is even more electrifying than what he wrote about Cambrai. And then he has an extremely good section on 1918 and the Tank Corps' role in 1918, and that's what his PhD was on. So that book really opened a lot of doors to the PhD, which I read, and that opened up a lot of the things that we then tried to convert onto the tabletop when we were doing the First World War. So that's a good journey. The other good book, which I think in dealing with big battles, is David Ascally's book called Day of Battle, which is all about Mars-la-Tour in the Franco-Prussian War.
That is superb. That is
superb. superb account of a single day of battle at Mars-le-Tour, and it's really, really good. But the one book I was going to say, which has just impressed me so much this year, I've mentioned it before actually, so it's going back a second recommendation. I read this in lockdown, but I also read the chapters about battle within this book even more. It's called The King's Army by James B. Wood. It's Warfare, Soldiers and Society during the Wars of Religion in France, 1562 to 1576. It's readily available. It's even better once I'd finished it and read it. I just finished it and just thought this was just incredible. Just an incredible book. It's all really focused about why armies win, and the description it have of the Battle of Dreux in 1562 is just superb, really examining in minute detail the different stages of the battle and how the battle transformed and how it was reported, how different participants saw things differently. And I think in anything which you're looking at, in trying to get that rounded picture, that's so important in trying to take all different sides, not just the most immediate sort of description of what happened. And I think what's common to those Mark Adkin books, the David Astley book, Bryn Hammond's book, is they've always taken a rounded impression of what was happening in the battle. And a good example of Dreux was that, the side which probably won thought they'd lost at one point and reported it back to Paris that they'd lost. The Protestants were convinced that it had all been a complete disaster. So the Catholics thought it was a disaster. So quite an interesting sort of number of different ways in which we can find a book to really focus on the information, which then can be translated onto the War Games table. Richard?
Can I just cheekily toss one more book onto the pile?
You cheeky tosser.
Yeah.
We're
Chuck
talking
that one on,
about
please do.
Big Battle War Games. And
I was going to mention that, yeah.
War Games by Don Featherstone. And when we think about the past was all big battles, let me read you this. Horse and musket period, the action in the Platteville Valley, 24th of July, 1863.
Yeah.
An action between Federal and Confederate forces, each formed of 3 infantry brigades, 1 cavalry brigade, and 1 battery of artillery, which, in terms of figures, 120 infantry, 30 cavalry, and 2 guns. Well, there's your Don Featherstone battle. That is not a million miles from a big, sharp practice game. So let's not think that the past was all about huge battles with thousands of figures, because Don, doing the groundwork for all the rest of us there, is fighting a battle, 3 brigades, very moderate and reasonable size. So we can fight games that are battles without thousands and thousands of figures.
Well, I think that's a perfect end to that discussion on those books, and one of the all-time greats finishing up the library there. So thanks for that, gentlemen, and thanks for everyone for listening. Keep well, please. Do keep in touch through the various forums and social media. As we all know from previous experience, lockdown can be a bit of a lonely time in various stages of it. I think it's important to re-emphasize that there's an extended large community around all the world, all of who have been through this, whether they've been in America, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, all around the world, in Europe, our great friends in Europe, and also in the United Kingdom and Ireland as well. And Richard's already mentioned that his gaming's gone up rather than down. So as we go forward, let's consider the alternatives to our usual club games or games which we have with our friends around our houses. And if Richard can manage it, I'm sure all of us can. So we'll be back soon with more here on Lard TV. So please do keep tuned in and remember to add us to your list of podcasts. Well, on that particular note, I think all that's left is for Roger Barraclough and his band to sign us out on another Oddcast. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
In tonight's show, Sidney Roundwood was joined by Nick Skinner and Richard Clark, with music by Roger Barraclough and his band.